Hi, for my learning, teaching, and interaction, I am just going to answer some questions that I liked from um, reading questions in the last few weeks. So the first one I really liked was, why is it important to have a clear understanding of your vision and the program goals and objectives with your FLE program before assessing the program? And I really actually liked what it talked about with having a vision for your program and how different people could have the same vision, different visions for the same program. And on top of that, I think sometimes when we're designing these programs, we kind of have these vague ideas about what we might like to get out of it. And in developing a vision, it suggested that while our vision should have big picture qualities and we should really be thinking broadly, it should also be very dynamic and descriptive in what we would like to do. Additionally, I think it's important to note that our visions need to be reviewed periodically and revised and updated so that we're still on track and making sure that we're presenting the best available information possible. The second question I wanted to address was, how's your value system likely to influence you as you teach? And I really enjoyed the ethics assignment that we had. I thought that the case studies were really good. Where I live, and what I've worked with in the past, I've worked with cultures from all over the world, and I live in a very diverse community, and so I liked that it really did discuss cultural differences and diversity, and I found it really interesting that my gut reaction was kind of, this is what I want to do, but when taking a step back and reviewing ethical guidelines and really thinking about it, realizing, well, maybe that's not the most appropriate action. And so I really liked that there are ethical guidelines. And I also enjoyed that it talked about how they were originally developed not as a strict law, but to help people to think and really be able to critically assess situations, which I think is really important because in ethical dilemmas, it can be so broad. But my value system and how it's likely to influence me as I teach, I found that actually to be an interesting question. I had to step back and think, okay, so what is my value system? And in terms of teaching, what is my value system? Where do my values lie in teaching? And I think that largely my values lie in wanting to promote good. So I think that largely presenting really good information is really important. But I also know that if when we're presenting really good information, we're not being very compassionate in our presentation, it's not going to be well received. If we're not encouraging and non-judgmental, the people that we're trying to give this information to are going to have a really difficult time processing it, understanding it. And so I think that my value system also is to put people first and to put their feelings first and to make sure that they feel valued as a person and as a person who's wanting to do better. I think that's so important for everybody on earth to want to do better. And I think that we really need to reinforce that. That's a really positive thing. How would you approach working with someone who has very different or contradicting values from your own? I've actually, I've had colleagues from all over the world. I've worked with special needs children for several years, so in the school system and in other places, and I worked in an environment where I was a parent coach for families that had children with autism. And a lot of the families I've worked with are, well, just from all over the world. And I have been able to gain a lot of cultural richness and diversity from learning from them. And then I've had colleagues also from all over the world. And it is interesting to see how their values different and how it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes I think when you're confronted with contradicting values, you're tempted to put kind of a guard up and be like, why would you think that? Or but when you break it down and you see how so often different cultures, their values really come from valuing family, valuing tradition, valuing, so many of them are really family based, work ethic, or whatever it is. Sometimes the behaviors that come out of that seem confusing, but when you go back and you realize that the root are all these really beautiful things that we don't necessarily have in our culture, or at least with the strength that they do in theirs, I think it's actually really enriching. So I think that's really important when someone's cultural behaviors, especially, are kind of clashing with yourself, to try and learn more about it and try and understand what the root of it is. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think even within our own culture, some people's cultural values are different from our moral values. We have to be able to agree to disagree and respect them as a person and having their own unique experiences that have nothing to do with us. And being able to say, you know, I really respect that you're going to make different decisions than I would in your situation, and that's okay. Oh, I think I'm just about out of time. Quickly, why is it important that whatever our training is, we understand our limits and boundaries when working with families? I think it's really important that we recognize as family life educators that we aren't necessarily specialists. We're not therapists. We don't have, for the most part, I'm sure there are some family life educators who do, but we don't have advanced degrees. We don't have specialized training in how to go about doing that. And if we were to encroach upon therapy, we could be more harmful than helpful. We're likely to be harmful. And I think it's really important that we can step back and recognize this is my goal, is to educate and not to be a therapist. And if I want to be a therapist, then I need to have other goals for education and so forth. Anyway, I am out of time. Thank you.